So welcome back to another episode of the Talented Learning Executive Briefing Series. I'm John Lay, the CEO and lead analyst of Talented Learning. This is my favorite series of content because we get to travel the world virtually and meet with and learn about the world's best learning system vendors in the world. Today's no different. We have LearnAmp, and Joe Hill Wilson is going to tell us all about it here out of London, UK. Joe, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you very much for having me, John. And yeah, delighted to be here. Delighted always to talk about LearnAmp and what we offer as well. So I wanted to start off with giving us a kind of a high level overview of who we are. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take you on a little tour of our platform, both from the learner's perspective, a little bit around the admin, and also to give you a bit of a kind of a gaze into the future to see some of the things that we've got on the roadmap that we are currently introducing into the products as well. So who is LearnAmp? Our big idea and what has been our vision for the last kind of 4.5, 5 years that we've been operating LearnAmp is to really help the workplace to make work life work better for everyone involved. So we mean that from the newest person coming into the business to the CEO to the person that's been there the longest. We really want to improve the work experience, and we talk a lot about employee experience and the employee journey being a real kind of key part of what we're designing for with businesses, and the platform has lots of points of impact, let's say, and milestones in which it helps. So we are a people development platform. And what that means is that we're not just an LMS, we're not an LXP, and actually we think in lots of ways those terms are maybe a bit unhelpful these days. You know, every platform offers something slightly different, so we thought we'd simplify it and get to the point of what we're trying to do, which is to help businesses to be able to develop people. Now that might be their employees, it might be their customers, it might be their partners, and again we left that purposefully quite broad, so that the platform is, again, still talking to the very many different use cases that it can cater for. We're very much helping businesses to be able to get their people to learn and in improved ways, and I'll hopefully show you that through the demo, but also to be able to connect. And I think one of the key things that we've seen in the last 16 to 18 months is the ability for people to be able to come virtually together and to be able to learn from each other. So peer-to-peer, how can they be part of the community? How can they collaborate around learning, deepen those experiences, and have more engagement and better impacts as well? And then a big part for us is also about linking this back to performance, because it allows you, from an employee's perspective at least, to be able to link this back to the context of what's important to them. Where are they in their career? What's going to motivate them to learn more, to be able to really see what the impact of learning and development can have both for them and for the organization. And we're always focused on the ROI, so really very detailed learner outcomes, which I'll show you, really looking at better efficiencies through more kind of informed experiences for admins, better UI, people wanting to be more involved in the platform. But also I'll show you what we've been doing around the skills development side as well. And then again, we've got performance improvement in there. So objectives, appraisals, one-to-ones, those kind of nice things as well. I won't talk about this too much, but our point here is just that over the last 16 to 18 months, if you look at all of the survey data out of what chief people officers and heads of people and L&D people are looking at, they're saying that employee experience and the technology that surrounds that is just becoming more and more pertinent. They want to be able to understand how their people are, how they're feeling, and they need to be able to have a good sense of their people, even if they're not in the office. And I think we all kind of recognize that hybrid working is here to stay in lots of ways, in some format for most businesses. So being able to have those digital tools to be able to map out not just the L&D side of things, but that broader employee experience, digital at home, is really, really important. Our platform very much focuses on that. So on the right-hand side, it's just talking about, if you look at some of the data points, businesses that invest more in their employee experience, it's 2.8 times better revenue per employee, 4.2 times better profit per employee, more likely to be a place that people want to work, more likely to appear in the most innovative top companies as well. So there's clearly a very strong link here. One of the things we always say as well is that a good employee experience has a big impact on customer experience. And I think we've talked about in the past, there's such a tangible link between your employees being happy, performing well, learning well, and then the impact that has on the product and the services you deliver as well.
Mm-hmm.
On the employee side, that, no wonder, is also pretty similar. They're feeling like they need really good learning opportunities. They need to adapt to the ever-changing and evolving, accelerating times. So new technologies, new situations they're finding themselves in, but also alignment between them and the business when they're at home, not in the office, not seeing their manager. So the platform also very much focuses on things like internal communications. How agile can you be about keeping people up to date? How are you using surveys as a way to check whether they're understanding the vision and what's expected of them? What support do they need? So it's really looking at those things in their entirety and saying there's a suite of tools and capabilities now that businesses need, and they're trying to get as many of those, in our experience, in one platform, or as in the kind of the most consolidated set of platforms that they can, because otherwise you've got lots of different tools, lots of different reporting, lots of different experiences, and also they all cost and you have to administrate as well, right? So we try and bring all this together. So if you think about us being in terms of the employee journey or in terms of a customer journey, really everything from the onboarding, so not where you maybe are looking to acquire them if it's a customer, or where you're looking to recruit them if it's an employee, but after that, it's about how do you get them up to speed about knowing what your business is about? How do you then engage them in terms of their learning journey? And then how do you keep basically iterating and keeping them aligned? And then that having a huge impact on both how long they stay with you, so kind of retention, and how well they perform whilst they're with you as well. And we think, again, this is very applicable for employees and customers. It's about engagement and alignment, and then either kind of customer retention or employee retention being some of the big kind of ROIs. Now, I won't go into this in too much detail, but the point here at a very high level is to say a well-managed journey will have a significant impact on how quickly people get up to understanding your business, again, whether that be employee or customer. And then that engagement whereby the individual is getting as much from the experience as the customers or the company's asking of them. So the LMS very much being the push, the LXP being the pull. And we think that balance of what the individual and the company requires from a system is really important. Then that will have a big impact on just how much more engaged they are. There might be points where people are retraining or relearning, but generally you'll keep them in the business longer. And this blue bit is really all the opportunity saving. If you can keep people in the business just 3 months longer, 6 months longer, and obviously it varies based on sector, the difference to you as an organization is significant. And I think a lot of people don't look at this kind of customer lifetime value or employee lifetime value section maybe enough. So it's a big part for us. I won't go into this in too much detail in terms of the trends, but probably just to end in terms of where we sit as a platform in this area, is that we have this wheel, these three kind of real foundational parts of our ecosystem. So learn is that we are an LMS and an LXP, the push and the pull, as I said. And, you know, we've been that from the very start. It's one of our real USPs in that you don't have to have two separate systems. You don't have all of the integration issues that lots of LMSs and LXPs have got together, and the reporting issues, etc. They play very nicely together, and they create that balance whereby, as I said, the individuals being able to use the platform as they wish to and what engages them, and the business is also doing their compliance and regulation and structure. And those two things really, really work well together, because actually I think people, their self-directed learning is much more supported if there's clarity around structure and where that might take them in terms of their career progression as well. Connect is much more about that social element. So it's whereby people can, again, we think this is hugely important, have community, online community, and where they have the ability to be able to learn from one another, find experts who can answer their questions. Increasingly difficult, all these things, when you're away from the office as well, and having a directory of really good experts, being able to get to the right people at the right time. So in the flow of work, you're being able to answer your problems as you need. But also about that collective wisdom. And I was talking to you about retention. We actually see knowledge retention being as big a kind of prize, I suppose, as employee retention. So even if those people are leaving, or they're going to different roles, or they're becoming managers, where's that knowledge sitting? Because if you lose that, that can again really harm a business. So, you know, knowledge management we're seeing as being an increasingly important thing that people are talking to us about. Where does the knowledge sit? How easy is it to find it? Can we report against it? Are we just kind of naturally soaking these things up? And then the last part, which again is much more relevant for employees rather than customers, is around the performance side. How does this link back to my progression? How am I having meaningful conversations with my manager about how I am and where I'm looking to head to? Where can they give me feedback? Where can I get feedback from my peers, my colleagues? And then how does that all play into creating a development plan that really is personalized and motivates? And how does that link back to learning? We totally recognize that we sit within a wider ecosystem and that we're not meant to be all things to all men and women. We don't want to be. We want to be best in breed in what we do. We are a platform, but we integrate with lots of the other parts of the learning and development ecosystem that we see being critical. So content creation platforms, curation, and those things you can do in ours, but there are also some fantastic other tools. So authoring tools, Anders Pink. In terms of a content marketplace, we work with people like Go1. We've just finished our LinkedIn learning integrations. Pluralsight is going to be in the next month. So we're always looking to improve and try and be that one place that customers can come to and really cater to many of their needs, but not just through us. We're not a one-stop shop. We work with lots of different partners, and we think that diversity of offering through our partners only benefits our customers as well. So that's a bit more about us. Any questions, John, or is it all making some sense?
Well, it's all making sense. Good overview. Just in terms of size of your organization and employees or customers, any stats you can share?
Yeah, so yeah, we're a privately invested company, so I can't give you exact numbers, but to give you a good sense, we're nearly 50 employees internally. And we have ways that we work with development houses across Europe. So actually we scale our resource very effectively. I think anyone that knows us knows that we build probably faster than anyone else in the industry and have done over the last 3 to 4 years. We truly think that. And we're not going to slow down. We've got, and I'll come on to this later, but we've got a very kind of aggressive roadmap for ourselves about where we want to get to. And so those numbers fluctuate a bit in terms of us as an organization. In terms of customers, we have very close to 100 customers now, but they vary in size. So I suppose in our development and our journey over the last kind of 4 years particularly, we've worked through those levels in some respects, from working with larger SMEs, really working very well in the mid-market space, and then we've been working increasingly in enterprise. So largest customer we've had is 45,000 people, and so it gives you a sense that we very much can scale and deal with size. And you can only go at the pace you can go at. So we've been very careful to, our retention is incredibly good. I think over 85% over the last 4 years. So we look to keep our customers when we do. We don't want to grow too fast and then that have an impact on service. So yeah, that's a little bit more about us, I suppose.
Excellent. Well, that's a lot of progress in just 4 years for sure, in employees and in customers. How about from a geography standpoint? Where do you guys like to do business?
Yeah, well, I mean, I always say we're very lucky. I shouldn't say lucky, but we've always had a lot of inbound interest. So it's kind of really come from everywhere. I'd say probably at least a third of our business now is in the US, in North America. And we have a good amount of following over in Australia now. But we have international businesses that have got offices in every continent. So we have 14 different languages that the platform's provided in. It's truly internationalized and has localization built into it as well. So, and we actually made a move not too long ago to fully being on Amazon Web Services in terms of our service, which means that we can actually deploy instances in any data center in the world. And so we've got full flexibility around how we manage that.
Outstanding. Last question, any particular industry verticals or sectors that are more important to you than others?
I mean, I'd never say no to anyone if it's the right kind of fit for the organization. But ones that we've seen where we do particularly well, matrix organizations, so businesses that are quite complex in structure. So let's say, for instance, like retail companies, or ones that are franchised, or where you've got, let's say, like architectural businesses or management consultancy businesses that don't have traditional structures. Those have been really interesting for us, because I think we found that a lot of other platforms, I won't say nobody, don't have the same flexibility we have around things like roles and permissions and teams and managers, those kind of areas. We've done a lot of work in fintech and software, gaming, and kind of online gaming particularly has been really of interest to us. information technology businesses, security businesses, cybersecurity particularly, and then a lot in financial, and I said fintech, but kind of more traditional banking, insurance businesses, and those kind of areas as well. Those have been some of our kind of bigger hitters.
Outstanding. Thank you. Perfect.
Pleasure. Okay, great. So I think what we were going to do at this point is that I was going to start sharing, and I'm going to start to show you what the platform looks like. So if I can just start to bring that up.
Me and a few thousand of your closest friends all want to see this.
Exactly. Well, very happy to show what we've got. We always are. Okay, so this is LearnAmp. This is what it looks like. Now, where I wanted to start today, and actually where I often start when I'm showing LearnAmp, is that this year we did a kind of a relatively significant change to our interface within LearnAmp, and we introduced this new feature, which is called dashboards. So what dashboards basically allows you to do is to be able to create different landing pages and interfaces for different types of users across your organization. Now, those might be by role, as in you might have an admin dashboard, a manager dashboard, a learner dashboard. But also, one of the changes that we're going to be making in this quarter is also to start to break that down by things like team or groups of users. So you really have a lot of control in terms of being able to decide what this interface looks like and what the use cases are and how they might differ across an organization or across a portfolio of customers or whatever those might be. Now, the reason I wanted to start here was I like to make the point that LearnAmp is very customizable. It's very flexible. So to the point that you can completely decide what this looks like. So you can move things around, you can start to rename them. And these tools that I'm playing around with, they're actually called widgets. So you can do things like resizing of them, you can rename them. And when we're actually looking at some of the other areas, let's say like platform analytics, you can really start to dig in and you can actually start to go in and say, I want to look at certain users, or I want to look over certain date ranges, and you can rename these. So there's a hell of a lot of flexibility here. And you can even start to break this down by things like content tags or content types or suppliers. So you can really decide what are the kind of insights I want, and then you can decide who sees them. So on these dashboards, you can start to decide who it's visible to and who it's defaulted to. And we'll come back to this in a bit more detail, potentially later in the demonstration, but always, I think, a good place to start. So even these areas at the top in the navigation, most of our features we can turn on or off. So I really do think, I say it and I believe it, which is you can almost create your own learning system based on what your use case is. And another really key phrase for us is about future proofing. So if you're a business, and it actually doesn't matter on size, we've met some very big businesses who maybe don't have quite as sophisticated kind of a learning and development offering as maybe some smaller businesses. So it's not necessarily based on size, but you might want to start off with the LMS, for instance, which is often quite foundational. So getting your compliance, your regulation, your training, ILT, VILT. You might want to get that foundational working first. Then you might want to introduce things like the LXP, then the social side of things, then maybe perform. So this idea that you can build into your requirements is a really key, key aspect for us and what people really enjoy.
Do you let me jump in there? Do you find that organizations will go full blown and do it all at one time, or is it a better practice to kind of step through those foundational series? What has been your experience?
It does depend on the organization. So if an organization's stood up all of these things and has quite a sophisticated offering, then they need to, if they're migrating from somebody else, they need to have that stood up in the next system. So in that respect, it can be a slightly longer deployment, or we talk a lot about customer readiness. Are you looking to move what you've got? Do you want to change what you've got? Do you want to upgrade it? So there's lots of conversation to have there, obviously. But then outside of that, our general preference is we say, let's be very intentional about what we're going to put up when we first launch. And then the business will be really clear what we're trying to achieve. And then we look to roll things out through our implementation and our professional services and success teams. So that we can be very clear what we're trying to achieve. Is it having a business result? If it's not, let's keep on working on it. And then when it does, then we can move on to other things. And again, I think that means that, what we see a lot is we get real good utilization of the features rather than kind of sitting on the shelf getting dusty, or people not even really realizing that they're there.
Right.
And that's really key. Like, one thing I'd say, for instance, where we've got this little tool for admins, we do very regular updates about what's going into the platform, because we think that awareness piece is something that maybe isn't managed as well across the industry. So when do people know that new things are going into the platform? We have very regular webinars about our product roadmap and how people can get best use of the tools that we've got. And then we've also got a support tool which allows you to go straight into our knowledge base. We've got chat bots. You can contact the team directly. You can submit feature requests. So I think that awareness piece is really critical to make sure that people are getting the most that they can from the platform.
I see. Great. Thank you.
Pleasure. Another thing that I think I'd just like to highlight, I used to be a head of L&D myself. I totally recognize that having a front-end UI that learners enjoy is one thing, but being able to try and replicate that so admins also can share in that experience is really key. And one of the reasons that people choose this is that the admin side of things is just a lot nicer to use than most systems. So there's lots of things that you can do on batch. So if you need to do things at scale, it allows you to do that hundreds, thousands, etc. But we also have this principle, like you have with things like Spotify or YouTube, everything's always 1 or 2 clicks away. So we're always trying to get you shortcutted into whatever you need to do. You don't have to have a PhD to use us. And you absolutely can get involved. Hopefully it feels much more intuitive than most tools that you use. And the reason we see that being so critical, and I'll come back to this later, is that we talk a lot about decentralizing the role of the platform. So it's not just an expert that manages it or administrates it. It's not just a small team. You can really get the business much more involved in using it, because it feels a lot more kind of user-friendly, and there's not such a digital literacy issue that you can have where people just go, well, I don't know how to use it, I don't want to use it, and they can get much more involved in using it. So
that probably aligns well too with your specialty in working with matrix organizations with complex, organizational structures, and you can have that delegated administration and delegated use ripple all the way out through the organization.
Absolutely. And the other thing that we've seen as a trend is, increasingly learning development, if we think about the employee side, but I think this is true of anyone really, is you want people to be as self-serving as possible. You want them to be as autonomous as possible. And I think that happens at every level. So where we talk to, and we've got extended enterprise customers, they want their customers to also, or the companies they work with, to take ownership of driving the use of the platform. So for instance, software training is a big part of that for us. We work with software businesses who use it for their internal audience as well as their customers and partners. And again, they want to, as much as possible, not have to push. So I think giving people the freedom to be able to use a tool and encouraging them to is really key. And in learning development teams, that I think, our reflection is L&D is becoming more of a facilitator to the business rather than a deliverer and a doer of everything. So again, if you have tools that encourages the business to start to look after itself, or managers to start to look after their teams, or hopefully you get my point, then it really does have an impact. Okay, so we're now in as a learner. Now, Louise hasn't got any administrative rights. She isn't a curator. She's not able to kind of share content with other people. Well, I'm not going to focus on everything, but I just want to give you a couple of flavors of what we're really about. So, for instance, we have a content engagement philosophy, which is around 4 pillars. So one of the pillars is around being able to create content that you yourself as a business want to house. So you can basically upload content. So you can upload things like Scorn, video, podcast, whatever that might be. But also you can bring in content from the web, you can build content directly in our app, you can create video content, audio content, and all of this you can actually do directly in the application as well. And the nice thing with all of these is that if it's the individual doing that and they don't have any administrative rights, they also have this little option at the bottom, which is that they can share that with what we call curators. And those curators can then decide if they think it's helpful, if they think it's appropriate, if they want to then take ownership for it, they approve it. They then have the governance of that item, and they can then update it, manage it, decide who sees it, where it sits. So And you're encouraging the community to contribute, but you still got those control elements around making sure that the right stuff's in the right place and being seen by the right people. And if they do have their content shared, then the person that's submitting this actually gets their photo and name put on the content going forward. So they kind of get kudos and recognition. And we're, that word community is really key for us. We want the community to recognize who its kind of mavens are, or, people who have got good expertise and who've got things to say. They want those people to be recognized as well. So those are examples of how you can kind of create your own content. Very easy to do things like build content from kind of external sources as well. So we're big fans of web content. We've got a library of about 6,000 pieces of web content that you can just complimentary use and blend that into your own learning or just benefit. And yeah, this was just me using this URL from YouTube. It's pulled down all of the content. And then again, I can either just keep it for myself or I can submit it through to curators. We've got some nice kind of extensions with Chrome, whereby if you're logged in, one click hit, and you can pull in an article or a podcast or a video. So we try and make as much use of these tools so that it's as frictionless and effortless as possible when you're looking to curate or create content as well.
Let me just ask a question on there. So it'd be the learner's responsibility to download the Chrome extension, and then once they have that ties with the LMS or LXP or both?
Yeah, exactly. So they basically, let's say if I was in this piece of content and I've pulled that piece of content in, I can either then at that point just keep it for myself, or I can share it to curators, or if it's been approved and it's now in the system, I could actually share that content with a couple of colleagues and say, I really think you benefit from this or you'd love it, and then they could share it along. Or they could just basically keep it in their own learn list, which is like a playlist of music. So essentially you can kind of build up your own catalogs of things that you think would be helpful. Or you can say, actually, I really want to come back to this, but I haven't got any time now. And then you go and assign it and say, right, I will do it by Friday. I'm going to make a commitment and I've put it in my to-do list and I'll come back to it. And I'll come back to this a bit later, but you can even feature it on your profile. If you think this really represents you and what you're all about and your kind of current learning trends, then you can also feature it on your profile there as well. Does that answer the question, John?
It does. Great.
Okay. So, cool. You've also got, I talked to this a bit earlier, the ability to use things like featured videos. So this might be something that you want to promote that's on TED Talks, let's say, or maybe it's something whereby you've got a video that's been created by the CEO or someone. And remember how easy it is to just go and create a video or a podcast from your phone or from your tablet or whatever. Or it might be that it's some kind of leadership program that you're promoting, or if it's customer training, maybe it's a new product range that you're promoting. So we're seeing that the use of things like featured videos and newsletters and blast notifications is being used increasingly as well, where people are thinking about it's almost like this kind of intranet or employee hub or customer hub. It's around the communication as well as it is around the learning. And again, obviously, you then got the analytics and it's all in one place, and it's a nicely kind of unified journey for those users as well. And the event tool, I won't go into in too much detail, but it's basically the management of any face-to-face or virtual. Again, if you're using this for customers, great for webinars or any online presentations you might have. And essentially, people can manage enrollments in terms of kind of signing up for certain events that they're just allowed straight into. Or maybe there are a certain type of event that if they go to apply for, they can see that it's available, but once they apply, they have to wait for approval. Or there might be some kind of events that only they can be invited to by other people. So again, hopefully you're getting a sense. The tool works very like something like Eventbrite. It's meant for like tools that people use in their everyday lives. And there's some nice things like being able to add in little videos or being able to have like little downloadable things that people can have post the event and that they can download as well. So lots of nice things with the event tool, and increasingly used more and more and more as we're seeing VILT taking over that kind of face-to-face element. It's probably the preset for most organizations in terms of how they're delivering their training now. Again, these widgets, you can totally decide if they're for you. If you don't want them, you can get rid of them, but they're helpful ways to just showcase back to users things that they've bookmarked. So if they bookmark things, they can come back and find it later. And anything that's been shared to them by the people, they can either dismiss if they don't think it's helpful, or they can go in and look at it. So again, trying to make it really feel like a lot of those tools that you would be used to in places like Spotify or iTunes or other kind of apps as well. And your development plan is very much a mixture between the LMS and the LXP, things assigned to you or things you're assigning to yourself. And anything assigned to you by like administrators always prioritizes over the things that the individual assigns to themselves. So really important updates, compliance, regulatory things can really be brought to the fore. And we've got lots of great things like escalation policies and very helpful reports to make sure that the important things, not just the nice things, are being managed and are being kind of delivered on in the platform as well. I'll give you a very quick flavor of some of our assessments. So you've got assessments whereby you can have quizzes which have got images or videos or content, and as you go through, you've got things like this where you can make them interactive, and people can go in. You can do competitions because they're timed. You've got pass marks. Again, some of the stuff I like from an L&D perspective, being someone that's been in L&D a long time, you can give feedback, and you can put a link in that takes them back to a video or to a knowledge-based article or a SCORM package. So it's how are we trying to support that activity in the most kind of efficient and remote way possible. So lots of nice bits there. Something that people don't often see as well is, how do you make more practical kind of application of your learning? And this is a great way. So we've got things like PDFs that people can read. And by the way, you can search, our search indexes PDFs. It's going to index videos as well. So we search into the content as well as just, the title and the tags. But here you can see that, and this has been used loads in the last year and a half. You can get people like new hires to actually go through and do a role play to camera as if they were having a customer conversation, or a manager might have a role play having a difficult conversation with an employee, and you can get great feedback from colleagues or peers whereby you submit those things, they can see it, they can go in and they can actually start to give you feedback. So you can give feedback via video, voice, upload best practice examples. You can even score people against a kind of competency type framework within that as well. And then the last type of assessment that we've got is more around the kind of surveying, people self-reflecting on how they think they're improving. You've got people giving 180 feedback, so trainers can feedback on the people they've just trained, or those kind of things as well. So there's lots of nice mechanisms for really tracking what the outcomes of these things are as well, and how people feel they're improving or how other people feel they're improving as well. Mm-hmm. And maybe just the last bit very quickly, just to show you here, is, we talk a lot about the journey of learning is important. And I think in a lot of systems still, it can be quite transactional. So I do this thing and then I go back to this other thing that I was assigned and I do that. Whereas we're really trying to stitch this together in a way that feels like you're going on a learning journey. So these channels allow you to build out, let's say like your onboarding, in a way by people have to do the first day before they can enter the second day, but it is locked, so it's forcing them to go through things in the right order. Whereas you can have other kind of journeys whereby you can just go through it in any way that you might want to. Or it could be that you have these things turn up. So this on day one, this on day two, this on day three. So there's a lot of flexibility from a learning design perspective around how do you want to structure these things, what kind of experience do you want people to have, what are the check and balances that you need people to have as well. So again, if I just go into day one and I just show you the overview, here, for instance, you've got face-to-face sessions, you've got digital assets, you've got e-learning, and again, you can see it's locked. So in this example here, for instance, you've got a quiz. If you don't get to the required level of that quiz, you can't go through to the next part. So it's forcing you to go back, prove your understanding. There can be interventions and notifications to managers or trainers if you've missed something multiple times, you actually might need an intervention. And then some really helpful kind of summaries of, well, what certificates did you get? What was the breakdown of what you've completed, what you've not, what you've got right, what you've got wrong? So we're always trying to create as much visibility as we can, both for the end learner about their progress, but also that managers can see, or coaches can see, or if it's for your customers, maybe your product managers, your community managers, and they have that real visibility there as well. All making sense? Any questions?
Oh, no, this is great. So you can, for each one of those days, then you can create really, your path can be any type of media, any type of the push, or any type of the pool that you talked about, any type of the assessment or video assessments in your own order, in any way that you want. And then you can either force users through it or give them the options through it. But that's the idea.
Yeah, and I should have maybe just focused on that a bit more, which is these learn lists are so easy to create. I mean, honestly, I always talk about it being like Lego pieces. Got all your Lego pieces in Learn, and you can create these in minutes rather than, hours in terms of kind of course creation in SCORM packages and stuff like that. And then they're completely flexible. This item could exist in another 2 or 3 other learn lists in different parts of it, but you still have the integrated reporting. So it's very, very easy to move things around and start to share them in different places, or just collect them. And course creation is one of our real strong suits. It's very easy to do. And as you say, it's using external resources, internal resources, paid for resources, maybe from like some of the big content houses, stuff created by your users. And actually, it's one of the reasons that we love this video recording, is that you can have little videos dotted throughout, which kind of replicate a bit like a face-to-face trainer. So they're kind of giving you context as to why you need to learn this thing. What's the Wi-Fi? What's in it for you? And it makes it a more interactive experience. So we often see them dotted throughout these learn lists as well.
Wow, that's great. Hey, I don't want to throw you off your track, but how about a little reporting? Let's what's that look like?
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's go into the reporting side of things. Okay. So if we are going to go into the reporting, let me just log out as a learner and let me come back in. So we've obviously got this kind of level of reporting that I was looking at earlier. So you've got insights. So things like, days active, sessions over time, lots of different leaderboards that you can add in here. You can have breakdowns of things like most popular content, average session length. So all of these widgets are very much up for you to decide how you use them, what data you're pulling from, and also the order in which you're creating this. We've also got other types of reports that you can build like this, and maybe you just have them per team, or you can have them per business, where for the more important compliancy areas, you've got a real visual cue as to like things that are overdue, things upcoming, things that have been completed. And again, putting the onus back on the manager sometimes to say, well, look, you've got this information now. You don't need us to chase you. You can tell whether your people have done things or not done things. So again, the visual aspect, I think, to this kind of reporting is really important. And I just want to, I'm kind of going to deviate slightly on the reporting, just show you this first, which is this org chart. Now, it works as well for customer training or partner training organizations as it does for employees, because this might be a whole company that you work with and all of their teams, or it might be your organization and it's broken down by division or by office, etc. The great thing about this chart is that here, this manager can see everything about all of the teams that sit underneath it. This manager can only see these 2 teams, the team it manages and the sub team. And now, again, I keep on harping on about it, but managers in our platform can assign content, share content, they can issue out surveys, they can provide assessments. They have a much bigger part to play in supporting their teams. And that also is provided to people based on this structure. So this manager could do that for all of these people, whereas this manager could only do it for their individual team. Now, the reason that that is relevant in our context of reporting is, let's say I wanted to create a company report. And I said, okay, I want to look at a behavioral aspect, like everybody that hasn't gone through our onboarding program. So I'd go in there and I'd start to go filter. Great, 60 people. I might also want to look at something like quiz. So I might say everybody that's got above a certain score in a quiz. So I then add that in and it's not showing anything. I look at another one and it's not showing anything. And then maybe I start to play around with it and I change the value and then it starts to show. So applying these filters allows you to really dig into this data, and you can do and/or reporting to really dive down into the exception reports that you're looking to create. The other types of filters, though, are things like user properties. So if you want to then break down this whole report by location or job role, or actually we allow you to add in custom fields, so it could be almost any field that you might want. So some businesses have compliance codes that are very specific to their industry or to their organization. So you can start to build this up. And when you do, you can then basically either export data, or we've got an open API, you can push it into a business intelligence tool, or you can save a report. If you save a report and share it with all people that have got permissions, then when you go to this report, then either those people that can see this report would just see it as a list and they can go into the report whenever they want, or you've got the ability to be able to send it out on a cycle. So daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and you can decide if it goes to all people that should be able to see this, or just selected individuals or roles or whatever you might want. Now, just to connect the dots on that, the reason that's so helpful, and again, it's one of the things I've always kind of loved about the platform, is it used to take me so long to create reports that would work for the whole organization, whereas this allows me to just create one report here, send it out, and the managers can only see the part of the report that they're allowed to see, so you're not having to replicate. It's really good from an efficiency perspective. It means that people aren't being seen or shown stuff that they're not meant to see as well. So yeah, does that give you a bit of a flavor? And then if I just go to something like surveys, you've got more this kind of reporting, whereby you could start to see things like a breakdown of results, weighted scores, averages. You can see individual responses. You can download those, or it might be that it's anonymized and you just see the written responses. So we've got different types of reports based on different types of features. And
how about from the social and informal stuff? Are you tracking that from a reporting standpoint or no?
Yeah, so you can actually, if you go in, lots of the things that you can do around the widgets is you've got, so the learning aspect, which is more the LMS LXP. And in the social side, you've got more things like, oh, sorry, it's actually in here. You can look at things like assigned versus discovered. You can see leaderboards of who's sharing the most content, who's adding the most content, and who's actually answering the most questions. So if I go back into here, one of the things that you might have if you've got like a team dashboard is that an individual manager can create their own dashboards. And you might start to break this down and add in a widget just for this team, where you say, I want to look at who is actually answering the most questions, for instance. And you could go in and you could go and have a look at that. Oh, I actually don't have them set up on this account, interestingly. But yes, there are lots of different other widgets that I can't show you on this, annoyingly. But basically where you can start to see like who has created the most amount of things. So it's a bit like this. If I just add this in. But instead of showing you the most completed content, it would show you like a leaderboard of the people that have answered the most questions or shared the most content, those kind of things as well.
Outstanding. Outstanding.
Great.
Cool. Where you planning to take all this? How are you going to land this plane?
In terms of the platform, in terms of kind of new things that are coming into the platform.
Yeah, exactly. What's coming down the pike?
Yeah, let's have a look at that. All right.
What's your vision?
Yeah, so a big part for us is we want to create this 360 perspective of, everything really to do with either a customer or an employee's journey, and everything really to do with the 360 view of their development. So one of those aspects is around skills. We're just launching this in the platform at the moment, and it basically has an onboarding process in which people can start to get invited into roles when they first join the platform. Now, again, this works as well for customer or partner training as it does for employee. But the individuals also get to say, well, look, I am invited into this role, but I've also got areas of interest in these particular roles or these particular skills. And basically, when you get invited in, you then have these skills, focus skills that you're working on. And these focus skills start to have a big impact in terms of the types of recommendations of things that you receive within the platform. So for instance, if I go in this area, I'm an advanced beginner, so I'm being recommended this content. I'm also being recommended these experts or coaches that I should talk to. And also I'm being recommended these training events or virtual sessions that I might attend. Whereas in this area, I'm an expert, you can see that it changes. So it starts to adapt and provide the right kinds of recommendations based on the areas that I'm most focused and interested on. The platform itself also starts to recognize if you're looking at a lot of content that's got certain skill tags against it that you haven't added to a skill focus, it'll say, by the way, you've been looking at lots of this stuff at the moment. Would you like to add that in as an area? You can add that in, and then you'd start to work on your journey about developing your skills in UI design, for instance. From the learner's perspective, you also then have the ability to get ratings from your manager, or you can self-rate. And all of this, even though we've got a really clear framework for it, you can adapt the levels, you can add your own roles that are specific to your organization, you can change all of the language around how you describe those levels and describe those skills if you want to, or you can use the ones that we've been building up over a long period of time. And you can also decide what your targets are as well. And then around this, you've also got the ability to then start to do things like this. Now, this is not what we're launching with. It's going to come really quite soon after. But when you're thinking about the kind of the gamification of learning, we're really into this form, which is how do you learn from others? How are you inspired what other people are doing and how they're performing well? So first off, how am I doing against my role? So these are the requirements, and this is where I'm at. Right, I need to focus on some of these areas, and I need to make this a target of what I'm working on. How do I look at others? Are there people in my role who are just doing really well that I might need to go and look at? Well, in that area, that's the bit that I really need to focus in on. That's the bit that I want to kind of develop my skills more in. And there are other things like you can see what the average score is in an area, what the top score is in an area, where you sit within that. And from an organizational perspective, you also then get to see things like this. So within a team, where are my skills? Where are the gaps? And we think this is so important because it allows learning and development teams to become much more agile. Where should we put our time that's going to have the biggest impact? Are these skill gaps aligned to the organizational challenges we're having, or the kind of the business focus? Or are we happy that people have got low skills here because our focus has really been about getting them up to speed on this new tool that we're using, or this new sales approach that we're looking to build in? Skill distribution. So what's the average, what's the lowest, what's the highest score, who's got the highest skills, the frequency of skills being rated, and the levels. And also, we think this is really critically important, skills over time. Are skills improving? But also, unfortunately, skills degrade. So are things dropping off as well? Are we actually putting enough time and effort to make sure that people are paying attention to kind of topping up their skills as well? So that's a very whistle-stop tour of the skills agenda, but we see that being really, really important. And one of the big things for us on that is it makes the system so much more self-serving. If people have got the right roles and then they've got the right levels, the system starts to recommend and really support that end user without too much support from the administrator or from the manager or the coach. And again, it's just about having that right skills system in place. Any questions on that one, John?
No.
Okay.
Great.
The other big one, and then I don't know how we're doing on time, but this is a big one for us, is around community. So we all work from home or have been working from home loads. How do people collaborate and congregate and have meaningful conversations around content? So you can basically create, and you can name whatever you want to call these groups, chapters, sectors, committees. We've been asked for so many different varieties. We just thought we'd let people start to create or choose their own. As they do that, they basically can start to then decide, is this a team that I'm using more for assigning content to or reporting against? Or is this more of a social team that I actually want to be able to have more interaction with the people within that actual team or cohort? In this social aspect, you basically have the ability here to decide, is this something that people can just join and leave? Do they have to apply and be approved, or be by invite only? Or is it secret, which is you only see it if you've been invited in? And then when you start to invite users, and this is really key for us in terms of a big kind of enhancement, is that within these groups or cohorts, you can then start to decide what role someone has within that community. So instead of kind of giving too much control away by making someone an admin of the whole platform, you can make them an admin or a curator of this particular cohort or community. And by doing that, they have a lot more control then in terms of supporting the other people within that community or driving it forward. And I won't go into it in too much detail, but all of that nice stuff that I talked to you about with dashboards and widgets, you can create per community or team so they can have their own interface. You've got a feed, which is much more like a kind of, if I just give you an example here, you've got an example of people kind of posting into more like a feed or a thread. and then people can kind of comment and up-like and yeah, kind of get involved in the social aspect, use emojis, all of those kind of things that we expect in these tools nowadays. And then also you've got the directory, which I didn't show you actually, but it's basically like a kind of internal LinkedIn. You can have that, but broken down so you can only see the people within your community or team. And then you can follow them, you can connect with them, you can message them. And then the last two bits is you've got documents and notes specific to that cohort. And then sub teams are also really important. So with some of the big software businesses we've been talking to, you might have a product, but then in that product, you've got disciplines or areas of interest. So being able to have multiple layers of kind of granularity that people might be in these groups or subgroups is of real interest. And again, you'll be able to allow them to be either kind of open or closed, by invite only, by request, etc., etc. So those are a couple of the big areas. Always happy to share more, and we could maybe provide you with a video for the platform in terms of kind of what's on the roadmap and other areas. But those are a couple of the really big themes.
All right, Joe. Well, that's great. Thanks for taking us all through and telling us about the company and the platform. It's really interesting, and I like it a lot. I like the solution and the components that you developed. It's interesting. We have a big focus on extended enterprise and customer learning, but at the same time, the specialties are really combining, because it's hard to find any organization out there that's not training their employees and their customers.
Well,
And
exactly.
so, what I like about LearnAmp is how you've kind of extended the best practices of employee development through the lens of helping your customers do the same thing, of attracting them and then onboarding them and then making them successful and allowing them to connect and developing them throughout their career and making it specialized for them, whether you're an employee or a customer, is all really neat. I like how you brought the pieces together. So, with the learn component that has both the push and the pull of the LMS and the LXP, push being, the organizational foundation of compliance training and organizational training, and the pull being all the neat ways that, and intuitive ways that learners through that Chrome browser extension, for example, can bring in content for themselves or for others, and then the ability to curate that and from an organizational standpoint, so that it's not just a learning organization pushing, but it's a living, breathing organism of that push and pull. I really liked visually. The application is really nice in terms of the visuals, of course, but more so the ability to tailor that to your organization. So using the concept of your widgets. Widgets aren't necessarily a unique concept to you, but where you've taken it to the next step is really that configurability of those widgets, and to make them useful in a variety of different ways, both for the individual or to share out among others. Nice, very graphics and visuals in terms of being able to see heat maps of your team, of your organization, in terms of how they're doing from that push and pull or in the social context. And in that informal learning context is really neat, as well as things like being able to record the video and the audio and thread that right in, whether from a content development standpoint or from a learner taking an assessment, or sending in a video of them doing something as part of a learning task is all really interesting, especially of working with organizations that have complex structure is something certainly needed within the industry. Is the more global or the more complex, or the minute that you start adding an employee with customer audiences and partner audiences, then you have two choices or three choices. You can either have a separate system for all of those and then try to figure out how to integrate that ecosystem on your back end, or have something that can expand out and look different and be different for these different audiences, but still be the same system. And as you mentioned, I think pretty eloquently, you can't have it all, but organizations would rather have 5 components than 35. And so, strategizing to pull the right 5 together. So you gave me a whole hour. I gave it back to you in 2 minutes, but a lot of really nice things of what you folks are doing. And yeah, outstanding. Keep up the great work, and thanks for sharing with Talented Learning.
My pleasure, and I will learn a lot from you in terms of how succinct you were in wrapping that hour up in 2 minutes. You did a great job. I will learn from some of the ways that you phrased those things. It was really great. Been
All right.
absolutely lovely to be here, John. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time here to take us through it. It's been really helpful for me to learn more about your organization and understand where you fit into the big picture. And that summary for everybody is a good place of when you run into those situations, you're in financial services, you're in fintech, you're in financial normally, you're working for a high tech or a software company or any type of retail, hospitality or organization that has lots of matrix and informal and formal type relationships. Those are all challenges. If you find yourself in that bucket, you know what those challenges are and how hard they are to solve. And hopefully we'll see some nice clear lines on how they can be solved with the LearnAmp solution. So with all that being said, thanks again, audience. Joe, you have a great day, and
Thanks,
audience, we'll see you on the next one.